It's the Monday Fab Four to give us a strategic overview of the best and worst of Power Play's political season. That's 2017-2018. Earnscliffe Strategy Group's Greg Weston leans towards neutral on all this, but Proof Strategies' Greg McEachern has a liberal background. Kate Harrison of Summa Strategy is conservative to the core. Carl Boulanger, president of Douglas Caldwell Foundation, is a former NDP insider, so I assume he's still in that particular vein on the political spectrum. Maybe not. Who knows? Who knows? I want to have some fun because this is the last time we have you before we take a summer hiatus. But I want to find out what you think was the best political movie. Don't confine it to your own little political silos. GMAC, who's the best move of the whole year?
Well, you know what? I can kind of cover a couple of parties with this in that the multi-partisan approach to NAFTA and our dealings with the United States. The fact that Trudeau brought in prominent Conservatives, prominent New Democrats, the business community, union, labor. And I think that approach, you know, even going forward, we still have probably better relations throughout the United States, even at the state level. And we've got a fairly big midterm election coming up in the United States. I think that probably worked really well. And I think the other parties, when they chose to go Canada first, I think Scheer had a couple of issues on this where they started criticizing. I think Aaron O'Toole talked about delays and things, and then we saw the tariffs on aluminum and steel, and then they kind of pulled back a bit. But I think the other parties said everyone was supportive on this. I don't want to sound like my Friday friend Jerry and say, you know, this was all kumbaya, but I think it was probably something that was good for Canada as a whole.
It's funny, I was about ready to call it the kumbaya strategy, but I'll back away from that. Kate, what did you like about strategy this year?
It's probably got to be the best move is getting the cannabis legislation puff passed through the Senate. I do think that was a major deliverable for the Trudeau Liberals. You know, I would suggest that they haven't really delivered on a whole lot else other than that. But in the spirit of this being, you know, a positive look at what went right, they did it right, and they dug in their heels when they needed to with the Senate and pushed back on some of the amendments, which is something they hadn't done previously. So I think that was a major win for them.
You did talk to your conservative friends in the Senate before you said that was the best strategy, right? Never mind. Moving on. Carl.
This is a voter. I speak as a voter.
Okay. I think the best move was the conservative recruiting former Saguenay coach Richard Martel. This allowed three things. A, to win a by-election with a star candidate. B, poke a hole in the Liberal shiny armor. And C, establish itself and consolidate their status as the main opposition to Justin Trudeau. This was the first electoral defeat of Justin Trudeau since the 2015 general election. And as such, I think it needs to be underlined.
I mean, it's like Carl Bly, NDP strategist. Okay, I must have missed that label. Greg Weston, I have no idea what you're going to predict as this one.
Thank you.
I think probably the best has been consistently the handling of the Trump administration. I mean, I don't think there could be a more difficult job for not just a leader, not just the prime minister, but Chrystia Freeland, for the bureaucracy. I mean, being in the Department of Trade at this point and trying to make some sense out of what's going on in NAFTA negotiations. And now, I mean, we're sitting on the precipice of a possible trade war. And I think the whole handling of it, the tone, the rest of it has been probably certainly the Prime Minister and the Liberals' strong suit on this. And I agree, it's the other party's choice of putting country ahead of partisanship on this one and realizing that we got a heck of a lot at stake here.
Yeah, well, we'll see if it's Mission Impossible succeeds or fails in the next few months. All right, go back to you, Carl, for the worst strategy. If he says something about Jagmeet Singh, I'm going to fall right off my chair, but go ahead.
Well, I would say that the worst move must have been, and it's probably the worst move of the decade, is when Bloc leader Martine Ouellet decided to throw not one, but two referendum, one on the future of her party, that she won, and one of her own future as leader, which she lost resoundingly, and then decided to resign after an half-hour press conference where she blamed everybody but herself for that very defeat.
What does that mean, though, in the political scheme of things? What do you think the Bloc ends up becoming? Is it just disappear?
Well, I think this is part of the problem, is that there's no traction right now for the Bloc. They have a splintered group called Québec Debout who's trying to make inroads. I do not see them surviving the next election, certainly not gaining political party status in the House of Commons, which opens up a lot of possibilities, especially for the Conservatives in rural Quebec.
Right. Okay. Kate?
I have to do a provincial runner-up to the whole saga that was Patrick Brown as the worst absolute move. You know, desperately
You really
trying
didn't
to...
have a choice in the matter, though.
Well,
but anyway.
he tried to cling on to power when he really shouldn't have,
Okay.
and threw basically the entire party into a state of disarray to try and save his own skin. And I think history will remember him for that, and not well. So runner-up there. Federally, I have to say, I think it's doubling down on the progressive elements of the trade agenda. We have really seen no other movement on free trade outside of NAFTA, and I think that that has a lot to do with it. And I go back to Trudeau's speech at NYU, kind of talking about how terrible populism is right in Donald Trump's backyard. I think these are things the Trump administration noticed, and I don't think that they played well. And for me, that was a misstep this year.
Greg, worst.
Jagmeet Singh, whatever he decided to do wherever he was spending time, it didn't seem like it was either in Ottawa or in front of a briefing book. There were a couple of press conferences where he had to turn around and for long periods of time consult with current members of parliament to answer questions during a scrum. It made him look like he wasn't up on things. And when he's very rarely here, I mean, you can cover a lot of Canadians with an appearance on the CTV National News. You know, you just have to figure out where you want to do that timing. So I think he also, his handling of caucus, he had to do a big U-turn on his treatment of Christopherson. It looks like Charlie Angus has more sway in that caucus than the leader does, and how he handled the Aaron Weir file, which was just very, very clumsy. So I think he could have done a lot better in terms of being the leader that there is a huge expectation for.
I agree. Okay. Greg, the worst strategy of the year. Drum roll.
Very quickly, and I know that everyone else was leaving this one for me, but seriously, politically, Mr. Dress-Up meets the would-be assassin.
Never stay, Greg. Never stay.
I knew that was coming.
For the Prime Minister, and it marked a pivot in the strategy of marketing this Prime Minister, changed very much from Mr. Congeniality to a very much more serious approach of a prime minister, not a minute too soon, I think most people would say. So the costume party in India was enough that it embarrassed Canadians. His numbers dropped. Everybody said, okay, well, stop. And there has been a whole marked change in his appearance and his approach. And with all the issues on the table right now, I think most Canadians would say, hallelujah for that.
So maybe it was the best move after all.
What? So you make yourself look like a fool, and then you come back.
It's finally,
and look
you
smart?
reach the limit, so you move on.
The Conservatives think that it's the best move by far. Get him back out of the country.
Should have brought that one up. All right. I quickly want to get some advice, and I don't care one or two leaders if you pick it. I just want to get some advice from you, free advice, because no one's paying for this yet. But what should the leaders do this summer? What messages do they have to get out? What do they have to do to get their numbers right? Because really, by next summer, we're going to be heading into basically an unofficial election campaign right about now. Greg, what's your advice?
Well, I think for the Prime Minister, right now, his summer may be determined in the next few days when those countervailing duties against the United States kick in on July the 1st. If Donald Trump's reaction to that is, maybe we should tone this down a little bit and walk back, then he'll have a summer on the backyard barbecue circuit to enjoy. If, on the other hand, Donald Trump comes back and says, really, you're going to come back and try and punish us? Well, how about 25% on the auto industry? Justin Trudeau's summer will be spent in crisis mode, and I would think it will very much affect how all of the leaders behave this summertime, because there won't be a community in this country that won't be affected when the economy takes that kind of hit.
G-Mac.
Well, two examples. One would be we think there's going to be a cabinet shuffle in August. I think the Prime Minister has to become a bit less aspirational and more about content. Look to ministers like Chrystia Freeland, who actually, were able to accomplish quite a bit. Because this fall, along with the rollout for legalized cannabis, we're also going to have a Quebec election. So a lot of things could change. So I think get down to brass tacks. For Scheer, today, they had a tweet that made fun of the Prime Minister taking a day off, blistering Chantal Hébert column from this. Some recent stuff around the swing sets, where the NDP were asking about Trump jailing children, and they were asking about swing sets. stop going after the low-hanging fruit. This is just minor league stuff. And it makes me wonder if the recent changes in his office were for the better, because they've seemed to kind of get more juvenile.
Interesting. Kate?
Justin Trudeau is best on the barbecue circuit. Emulate exactly what he did in the town halls over the summer. Get him in front of real people, not overseas, with his sleeves rolled up, just talking about pocketbook issues. I think that Canadians want to be reminded that Justin Trudeau has their interests at heart. Yes, there's a whole lot happening internationally he needs to be concerned with. But at the end of the day, people vote based on economic issues. So I would get him out on the barbecue circuit talking about that. Andrew Scheer, I think, needs to start putting ideas out there. He's been in the leadership position for over a year. It's normal that people wouldn't know who he is, but start talking about ideas. The convention in August is a good opportunity to start tabling some of what people can expect. And Jagmeet Singh, take out an apartment in Burnaby South and run and get yourself elected into the House of Commons so you can start spending some more time here in Ottawa.
Carl, last word to you.
Well, I think for Justin Trudeau, he needs to, reopen his book and look at what are the deliverables that he can bring to Canadians starting in the fall. The countdown has begun, so he needs to start doing that, have a few more deliverables so that Canadians can see how they can benefit from the Liberal government. For the Conservatives, I think Andrew Scheer should bring his entire caucus into an anger management session. They need to stop hating Justin Trudeau. It's not going to work for them. Canadians don't hate Trudeau, and it's not going to project on them well if they keep doing what they're doing right now, as Greg just mentioned. And thirdly, for Jagmeet Singh, he needs to work harder than the two others. His notoriety is not as high, so he needs to be seen and heard by as many Canadians as possible. So he needs to hit the ground, hit as many riding as possible, and spend an enormous amount of time in British Columbia where there's a possible seat for him.
Let's see if there's anyone raise their hands at this summer election. Anyone? No? Oh, the hands are all down. Good. We don't want one. All right. Thank you all. Have a great summer. We'll look forward to seeing you all in early September. Thanks again.
Thank you, Don.